Hello and welcome to the Story Shed. Hope that you're all well and taking good care. If there are any of the stories that you've enjoyed in the Story Shed, you can write to let us know at the storyshedblog@gmail.com. That's the storyshedblog@gmail.com. If you have any of your own stories that you've written that you'd like to be read on the channel, then let us know at that same email address. You could send us some poetry or some of your own pictures. We'd love to have them and to look at them, and we would really appreciate them being sent. But for you now, I have a story from the Children's Bedtime Treasury, which has become one of my favorite books. And this story is called The Singing Bear. So sit back, relax, and hopefully enjoy the tale. Long ago there lived a young boy named Peter. He was a gentle lad who loved all creatures, but most of all he loved the animals and birds of the forest. Many a time he'd mended a jay's broken wing or set a badger free from a cruel trap. One day the fair came to town and Peter was very excited. He could see brightly coloured tents being put up in the field and carts arriving with mysterious-looking loads. As soon as the fair was open, Peter was off with his money in his pocket to try his luck. First of all, he had to go at the coconut shy. Then he tried to climb the greasy pole. Finally, he used his last coin on the tombola stall. He was about to head for home when out of the corner of his eye he caught a glimpse of a dreadful sight. Lying in a cage looking sad and forlorn was a large brown bear. On a small plate at the front of the cage was the bear's name, Lombard. He looked so dejected that Peter immediately vowed to set him free. Now the cage was strongly padlocked and Peter knew not how he could break the lock. He turned to make his way home with the bear gazing pitifully after him. That night Peter tossed and turned in his bed. What was he to do? He wasn't strong enough to break into the bear's cage, and the keeper would surely not agree to set him free. In the middle of the night he resolved to return to the fairground to comfort the bear. He slipped out of bed and made his way by the light of the moon back to the fairground. To his astonishment, he found the bear singing a song to himself in a beautiful voice. For a while Peter listened to the lovely sound of the bear singing, and then he had an idea. He remembered a piece of paper he'd seen pinned to the palace gate. "Don't cry, Lombard," he said. "I think I know a way to get you out of here, but first you must teach me your song." The bear was happy to oblige, and soon the two of them were singing the song together. Then Peter said, "I must go, but I'll be back tomorrow. And remember, when you see me, be ready to sing your song." The next day Peter put on the very best clothes and set off for the palace. Pinned to the gate was the piece of paper, just as Peter had remembered. On the paper was written in a handsome script, "The king requires a minstrel with a fine voice. Apply within." Peter knocked at the gate. He was shown into a beautiful golden gallery where a row of minstrels were waiting to be auditioned. A courtier rang a little bell for silence, and in came the king. He sat down at his great gold throne. "Let the audition begin," cried the king. The first minstrel stepped forward. He sang a song in a sweet, high voice that tugged at the heart and reduced the court to tears. The next minstrel sang in a deep, rich voice that sent shivers down the spine, so that the birds in the trees stopped singing to listen. The next minstrel sang a song that was so witty and amusing that the entire court wept with laughter. At last it was Peter's turn. He stepped forward, gave a deep bow, and said, "I beg your Majesty's permission to perform my song out of doors, so that all the wild creatures of the forest might hear it too." "What a strange request," said the king. However, if the truth be told, he had grown quite sleepy listening to so many beautiful songs, and thought that the fresh air might liven him up a bit. "Very well, but it had better be worth it," he said, giving Peter a fierce look. "Follow me," called Peter. He led the king, the court, and all the minstrels out of the palace gates and down the road. "Where are we going? And this is very untoward," they muttered. At last they reached the fairground, but Peter didn't stop until he was in view of Lombard's cage. Lombard saw him, and Peter winked at the bear. "This is where I'd like to sing for you," said Peter to the king. The king's royal eyebrows rose higher and higher as he looked around him. "Well, I must say this is very odd indeed. However, as we've come this far, we may as well hear your song." "Proceed," said the king. Peter opened his mouth and mimed the words while Lombard sang. It was the most beautiful song that anyone had ever heard, and by the end of the song the king was sobbing tears of joy, mirth, and sorrow all together. "That was the finest song I've ever heard," he said. "You have won the audition, and I would like you to be my minstrel." Peter took another low bow. "Sire," he said, "would that I could accept, but in all honesty it was not I who sang, but my friend, Lombard the bear." Everyone gasped as they saw the bear in his cage. For a moment the king looked furious, but then he began to smile and said, "I praise you for your honesty, Peter, and I would very much like to have Lombard for my minstrel. Chancellor, bring me the royal purse." The king paid Lombard's keeper handsomely, who was then delighted to set the bear free. Lombard became the king's minstrel and was famous throughout the land. And from then on, Peter went to the palace each day and sang duets with his friend the bear. And it's said that in the end, Peter married the king's daughter. And that's the end of the story of the Singing Bear. We hope that you enjoyed it. Please let us know if you did, or even if you didn't. Just write to us at thestoryshed@gmail.com. And in the meantime, be well, take care, and bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.